This is the Bonus Section Podcast, episode number 77, The Pluses and Minuses of Chasing an Ideal. Are you the type of person that knows you were meant for something greater in this lifetime, and that somewhere inside of you, there's just this bigger version of yourself trying to break through, but in spite of all your self-development attempts, you just can't seem to find the way up there? Well then, hey, you are definitely in the right place. I'm Danny Griffin, the founder of the Bonus Section, the host of this podcast, and I'm a person just like you, trying to learn how to live the most fulfilling life possible. So to help you take immediate action to get moving in a better direction so you can work on yourself a little bit, we take all the notes from each episode and we post them for a short period of time over at freethinkingtools.com. freethinkingtools.com. That way you have something to work from, right? I know sometimes you want to sit down, you want to write some notes and think about your goals, but writing is an awesome way. It's just a powerful way to get all the noise out of your head and think your way in the right direction, okay? Let's hit this one. The pluses and minuses of chasing an ideal. First of all, let's get into the first point here. Goals are ideals, right? They're idealistic concepts for what we want. So in other words, whatever you think, and let's go again, I seem to always talk about my kids in this podcast because I spend so much time coaching them on the head stuff, really, which is what this podcast is about. How to get up in your head and straighten the noise out and get yourself moving in the right direction. So when you talk about goals, whether it's a college or it's a career, and this can be any of you. You don't have to be at school age. You can have a second career. You can leave corporate America and become this great thing, or you can retire and become a world traveler, whatever. These are all these great ideals, and that's a new goal. And that's why I think writing down these goals and having an idealistic idea. See, and by the way, it's a slippery slope here. With goals, you can look at what other people have achieved, but look briefly. Don't go too far with them. Say, oh, that person, they seem to be traveling the world, but don't make any judgment about you versus them. That's a super slippery slope. Just say, I too would love to go to Greece. I too would love to become an actor. I too would love to become a successful entrepreneur. That's fine. That's fine. But you have to always compare yourself to who you were yesterday versus who they are today. Otherwise, you're so caught up in them and you don't know the half of somebody else's struggles or what they did to get there or what sacrifices they are. And some of those people that you're looking at that you think have achieved this ideal, they're drowning in a bad psychology. They're drowning because you're only seeing what you perceive to be this ideal. You have no idea what the parts of that are. And by the way, I was just talking about this in the context of my real estate agency coaching business, right? Where I coach real estate agents. And I was referring to top producers in that business. And I said, some of these people, they seem to be getting all the trophies, but little do you know, they come to me and say, I'm drowning. Help me build a better business. This isn't a business. I'm drowning. And others are saying, hey, can you help me refine this? Things are going really well, but I'd like to scale up into multiple states now. So you don't know, right? So just be careful of what the ideal is. I would implore you, take some of what you see out there, do plenty of research online, be careful of the nonsense stuff. Man, online, there's so much noise. There are so many people that are pretenders. Try to do some realistic homework to create this ideal, but more so, don't be afraid to dream. I'm a huge fan of your imagination being what leads you into this creation of this idealistic goal for yourself. Write down on a piece of paper, what would my ideal be? My ideal be? My ideal be? Right? Write it down. Get it out of your head. And then start to put some details. And that ideal would include this and that. Get specific. See, in this whole concept of the theater of your mind, you are the writer, you are the producer, you are the director, and you are the main character. You might even be the antagonist and the protagonist. You can be all of these things in your imagination, which is wonderful. But get them down and write them down as if this is the most important script you would ever write. And nobody's there to judge it. It's nobody's business. It's your business. Nobody's business. I'm talking parents, friends, siblings, etc. You write this idealistic idea down for yourself, right? The next point here is that we actually learn about reality, right? Because I'm going to talk about the pluses and minuses of this ideal and going after it, but we learn about the reality of an ideal as we chase it. So that's the thing, that now we've gotten this, idea and concept. We've written it down. We've done a lot of thinking, and now we begin to chase it, and bang, we start to smack into some setbacks. And what happens is that's reality. And so you have to be very careful about how you look at this chasing, right? And just embrace the fact that reality is now going to come. So we have this ideal, we've imagined it, but now we have to go out there and begin this trek for ourselves. And just be open to what reality is. There will be pluses and minuses of reality, but that's where I think your guided missile, per se, that you're riding towards this idealistic thing is going to run into some of the stuff blowing you off, right? Off course. So 1 minute you seem to be right on track, the next minute you're not. Go back to writing down and make your adjustments, right? That's what's happening here. So I think I'm going to go a little bit further with that concept too, though, with reality. I want to go into the third point right away. You see, life is offering up during this pursuit very significant struggles and setbacks when we chase our ideal. So let's say it's a love interest, and you have this great ideal of who you'd love to be with, right? And you create this the ideal lover, the ideal partner, the ideal whatever you want to call that person, and you see them in your head, and then all of a sudden you meet somebody. And you really only look at the corroborating evidence. What does that mean? That means you go on your first date. You spend your first hour together. And you're just so excited to be moving in the direction of a relationship, you go blind. You don't see everything. And plus, how could you anyway? I mean, a first date, for example, just such a short period of time, or you believe, you took this job and it was the ideal job, and first day in there, reality hits you, and all of a sudden you're like, yikes, right? But that's okay. Just be careful of this law of corroborating evidence. Don't only look at what enhances. Look at what takes away. See, there's the plus and the minus. My gosh, this person, this job, this scenario, it's everything I dreamed it would be. But don't get carried away with that part of it. Go back to that realistic moment and say, but what's going to be challenging for me? See, that's where this idea of ideal and perfect becomes the little slippery slope there. Because your chase of ideal can make you get really small and you think everything's so perfect, but then all of a sudden something's not. You don't have a second date, but we were so much alike and we just hit it off. And the first week is, wow, this guy was so much nicer when he interviewed me. What's going on here? And this group I joined, yikes. I mean, they're all enthusiastic, but there's some head cases in here and they're mean. Those things happen. That happens, that you get there and these significant struggles and these significant setbacks are there. And that's where if you can't develop your realism alongside your idealism, it becomes a very dangerous spot. This is where a lot of people lose hope, and ridiculously so. I think I've learned a lot about cognitive distortions. And if you go Google cognitive distortions, you're going to get a list of them. And you're going to see things like exaggeration or all or nothing thinking. That's this slippery slope of chasing the ideal. Is that, let's think about you get into an ideal college and everything is going to be so great there. And then the first weekend, you went from being a straight A student in high school and you get your first C and you're in shock. And now it's all or nothing thinking. And now you have the imposter syndrome. How did I ever get into this place? I'll never make it in this place. I'm going to drop out. And that's what a cognitive distortion can be. And that's the minus side of chasing that ideal. Instead, right? Instead, what you should do is just understand these things go together, idealism and realism, and that the law of corroboration is the thing that becomes the enemy of learning. Let me just say that again. idealism and realism go together. And this law of corroboration is the devil in this whole thing that keeps you blinded towards finding the balance between the two. And what I mean by that is, if we only look for the reasons everything is right and it's improving, the realism sneaks up on us and it gives us a bigger smack than we think. And what that in turn triggers is this whole cognitive distortion that you're not right for this thing, or you never should have done this, and who am I? That's called the imposter syndrome. Who am I to even have pursued this? I must have been out of my mind. And we go zoom right down to zero, and we run away and we quit. And worse, that leads to depression. I'll never be good at anything. See, because you do have to start all over again after something, or you're falling back into this hole. So there's the big minus of chasing an ideal if you don't get real. That's the point. Now, the bonus section of the bonus section podcast today, I'll go a little bit deeper into that. You want to embrace the fact that ideals, how about this? Now watch this. It's going to be tricky. Stay with me on this one. You want to embrace the fact that ideals or idealistic goals are never really achievable because they're always improving. If you embrace this whole pursuit, let me explain this, right? So I might start off, a wise man said to me one time, what's important to you today won't be. So here I was with these big endeavors and these big goals to start my own company and, be individual in a certain arena that I had been in somebody else's, employee for a long time. And I wanted to go out there and I was really stuck where I was. And he said, well, what's important to you today won't be. Meaning he could see my future better than I could see it. He could see that I was so tightly holding on to this idealistic thing that I was hoping would change, and I really wasn't seeing, or maybe I was using it as an excuse not to go do my own thing. And so he called me out on it. And I had this idealistic vision of what was like obviously a dead end. See, that's that law of corroboration that snuck up on me, and that's why I'm sharing it with you. And it was more so, well, why didn't I just sit down and think, well, what really is important to me? Well, this other thing that may or may not be achievable, but why not move in its direction? And then I did. And there were plenty of setbacks and struggles, but the freedom to be there. And now I look at it and this sense of exasperation of when am I going to be successful? I just dropped that too. I dropped it because that's what I learned in my little bonus section of learning is that I never really get there. It's really that North Star that I get out and it moves in the sky for me, right? And I just keep making adjustments, and that's a game worth playing. I mean, we're goal-seeking organisms as human beings. And if you want to thrive, you always need to stretch because we're either expanding or contracting either way. So if I try to leave it there and I only look for corroborating evidence, I'm going to get smacked. It's going to make me feel depressed and down, and I'm going to start to shrink a little bit. I'm going to shrink backwards. So that's why I've come to realize, well, the ideal is never really achievable. I'm just always trying to adjust it and continue to close the gap. And that's the game worth playing in between, right? Learning, being involved in something. Look at, if you're young, you probably don't know this yet. If you're older, midlife or older, you realize that a lot of people, when they stop pursuing any sort of growth or goal, they contract right down into the grave. All of a sudden, you hear of people that worked at a place for a long time. They're going to retire and they're dead within a very short period of time because they don't reset a new ideal for a retired life to go and to achieve. And they atrophy very quickly. And I've seen it. I'm at that point now where I'm old enough to be close to that generation that's above me and those that are still thriving. I mean, I think about just out there, Warren Buffett. I'm a huge fan of Warren Buffett and his partner, Charlie Munger. These guys are just wise old men and they're excited every day. One guy's 89, one guy's 98. I think that's, their age, and they're still going to work every day. And they were talking about all of these older people that work for them are still doing what they love to do. And they're still chasing a new ideal as the world changes, technology changes. See what I mean? Like you just never get there. That's the fun in life. If we're goal-seeking organisms and you want to live a long, healthy life, keep pushing on that ideal and keep chasing it and adjusting it and embrace that as a game worth playing. Let me go back and summarize this. There are pluses and minuses of chasing an ideal. The cool part is a goal is an ideal. That's the greatest part. That's a plus. Always pursuing a goal versus having nothing going on in your life, that's not good. And we learn about reality. This is a plus too. We learn about reality as we chase that ideal. We see the realistic path that it takes to get moving in that direction. We're not guessing anymore. We learn. And as we become really street smart or life smart, we're becoming realists about how the way the world really works. But you got to be careful because life offers up significant struggles and setbacks when you're chasing that. That's a slippery slope that can lead you to only think that you are going to get it your way. And then when you don't, you get these cognitive distortions and you bail out. The bonus section is just simply embrace the fact that ideals are never really achievable. But that's the fun part because they're always improving. And that means you're always chasing and improving yourself. All right, I'll summarize it this way. The greatest part of having an idealistic goal is that it propels us forward each day and it gives our lives true and deep meaning. However, when we first start chasing our ideal, we tend to ignore that the path will be filled with harsh, real lessons that will often stop us dead in our tracks from continuing onwards. However, we must embrace that the fun in chasing an ideal is that our perception of what's important to us is always changing. And we have the ability to course correct and keep on pushing. And in the process, become a much bigger version of ourselves. And that's fun. All right, listen. Remember, you can take immediate action to get moving towards these idealistic goals on the positive side because we take the notes from each episode. We post them for a short time over at freethinkingtools.com and we give you instant access. You can sit down, print them out, and get that pen out and get that paper out and write. It is so empowering to learn how to write, especially when it comes to writing your own script for your own life. Very powerful writing. Also, don't forget, of course, you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen. We also post our content on YouTube, so don't forget to subscribe to the bonus section. All these podcast videos are right up there for you and your enjoyment and your improvements and whatever else they bring you. Share them too, if you don't mind, because that will help us continue this mission of becoming a bunch of people for others. We have a moral obligation, I think, to push good information that's helpful to people, improve somebody else's life, and yours will grow multifold. All right. I sign off the same way every time. I'm going to do it again here today. Nobody's coming for you. Please remember that. Nobody's coming for you. So go get to work on yourself and a better plan to achieve your goals. And we'll see you in the next episode to help you do just that. Thanks again.